Welcome to another student edition of Great Books, featuring a panel of local students sharing their interest in classic literature. Here's your moderator, Jack Hatfield.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us for the Great Books Show Student Edition. I'm Jack Hatfield. Our panel meets regularly to discuss important works of classic and modern literature. Today we're discussing Self-Reliance, an essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson, first published in 1841. Ralph Waldo Emerson, who died in 1882, is considered by many scholars to be the most influential American writer and philosopher of the 19th century. This essay presents Emerson's theme of the need for each individual to avoid conformity and avoid being limited by consistency. They should follow their own instincts and ideas. As a whole, it expands on Emerson's motto of trust yourself. It stresses the importance of thinking for oneself rather than meekly accepting other people's ideas. He promotes individual experience over the knowledge gained from books and warns against being restricted by public opinion. I thought our first question would be kind of an overarching is asking how Emerson says we should live our life.
Well, the basic idea of what he says throughout his essay is that we should only live life based on how we feel and what we feel is right, and we shouldn't necessarily consider what other people think we should do or consider what society says we should do. And he really believes in self-independence and self-decisiveness, and making sure that every choice you're making is only based on your own point of view and what you believe is right, and not necessarily how other people want you to act.
Going off that, a big part is he says that you should surround yourself with people who have similar ideals as you. So then you're getting information and conversing with people who believe the same thing as you. So you're getting different point of views, but on the same ideas.
Yeah, and he's not saying, right, that we shouldn't read, we shouldn't go back to history. Can anyone support that from? We don't just say anything we want at any time. I mean, obviously, when he writes here, he's very well read. He's referred to a lot of his predecessors.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of what's the proverb is, if you can't remember history, then you're bound to repeat it. So,
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting how he says that the great men of history who people like to imitate have become great because they follow their own natural principle. I just thought that was an interesting take, that he claims these people rose to prominence because they had a clear vision, they were able to follow that. I just thought that was an interesting view.
Yeah, he's saying that to become a great man or a great influential person like these people, you need to follow your own beliefs and take that more from history. And he's saying if you are going to look back into history, it should be of your own accord and because you really want to do this to improve yourself, and not because you want to be entertained or because you feel you're supposed to. He really believed that the reason you should do anything is because you want to improve yourself and because you personally feel that it's important.
He mentions that imitation is suicide, so you have to be yourself. You can't rely on these great men and just be exactly how they were. You have to make your own person.
I think of it as like the format for Great Books discussion is where we do research, we read it several times, we might even go to the internet, but when we're right here, it's whatever comes up for us at the moment. Is, you know. What's the kind of the overarching theory of self that he's trying to, how do we know in those periods where we go to instinct and ignore the past and go off on our own? What view of mankind does he have in those moments?
Well, he definitely has a very positive view of mankind, that men are perfectly capable of guiding themselves, that they don't need the guidance of, for example, as you said, someone from history, that you're capable of being your own compass.
Anybody else?
I think he thinks that if a man knows his worth, that he'll be able to stand on his own 2 feet and support himself. So that kind of makes him feel that like what Quentin was saying, that he believes in humanity to do what they should do.
And he has a belief in kind of this transcendental intelligence that we all can hook into. And it's the same for everybody, which is somewhat controversial. I don't know if we all believe that.
Yeah, he seems to express that if you work hard enough on yourself and improving yourself, everyone can become great. He feels that everyone has potential, but not everyone can access their potential because they conform to society or don't listen to their own instincts. And so he feels that everyone could do it if they had the ability to access their own inner self and what they actually believe.
What holds us back, according to Emerson, from doing that?
Society, its rules, its conventions, the pressure it places on people to conform, that is crushing the individual greatness, according to Emerson.
Yeah, he's very big against big corporations and large societal norms, or like he kind of is against religion for the community aspects of it. He's very much like, he feels that people should believe something because they personally believe it, and so he really just feels that if someone is relying too much on society and the structures that are there in place already, people will not be able to think their greatest thoughts and express their true opinions.
He also says that fear holds us back because he says that we are afraid of truth, afraid of fortune, and afraid of death, and afraid of each other. So we have this fear of what is to come if we spend the time to think and to like just be by yourself and try to understand what your values are. So that's another thing that's holding society back.
I thought he had an interesting take on religion. He said that when he goes to church service, the best time for him is the quiet before the preacher starts in, because he says he knows what the preacher's going to say anyway, that he's got a certain line or script that he's going to follow that's going to be pretty evident. So, yeah. Any idea what this means? He says, the power men possess to annoy me, I give them by weak curiosity.
Well, I think what he meant there is that no one has power over you unless you give it to them, that people cannot upset you or cause you hurt unless you value their opinions, or that you're curious, as he put it, about what they think. That he's saying that if you were a complete individualist, that you completely refuted the idea of relying on other opinions, that no one could upset you, no one could cause you hurt.
Right, yeah, so just a little bit different. Were you going to say something? No, just
I don't know.
He says don't give to charities.
Oh, yes. He did say
That was an interesting view. I mean, his view on that is that you're only giving to a charity because you're cleaving to a societal norm, that you're wanting to feel good in the context of society. And if you think that, hey, if I give a $1 bill to this hobo on the street, I'll feel good in the context of society, that he's saying that you should be doing good for your own sake, not because society pressures you to do so.
Yeah, he feels that way because, it's like a good thing to do. Like, it's not, he feels that you shouldn't give to charity because the only reason it's a good thing to do is because other people tell you it's a good thing to do. Like, it's not necessarily something that might be the first choice you would have if you had a bunch of money. If you have a bunch of money and you need to improve yourself, you're focusing on yourself. You are going to help to support yourself and buy a house and food. And he's kind of saying that should be what we first focus on before necessarily giving to charity, because we only do that because other people are telling us it's good.
I thought that was...
He also says charity is somewhat abstract. You give to United Way or something, as opposed to giving to somebody directly, a specific person. And he says this, I thought it was really good. He said he was talking about somebody that was telling him about saving people in Barbados or someplace. And his response back was, what about right now, the people that you meet right now? This abstract saving somebody, 1,000 miles away as opposed to someone,
Right, directly in your life.
Exactly, yeah. I thought that was very powerful.
It's also much more fulfilling, and it will change you if you help someone that is in your life, and you can see the change, and it'll affect you more in the long run than if you just donate money and you'll feel good in that moment.
And it definitely follows his motto of self decision. If you're giving to someone in your life who directly affects you, if the reason you're giving to someone is because you care about them and love them and want them to be better, versus oh, I'm just going to give to this person because I'm supposed to. He's very much believes that you should always have a good personal reason to do anything.
And hooking into this universal intelligence somehow. He doesn't really explain exactly how you do that, but because it's not, just do anything.
Yeah.
So,
it's interesting because it kind of made me think of Buddhism and meditation and awakening yourself to the wider world. And it was just a fascinating idea, I feel, from a man who grew up in a Christian society to say something that seemed in a way kind of Buddhist. And he was you need to go into yourself and pull out what you truly feel. And that's something that I thought was very reminiscent of Buddhist practices and Buddhist ideas.
Very much so.
And I thought that was very interesting in this.
And he's also talking about clearing the crud away, the layers of the onion and that was given to you by society and other people trying to get you to do something, and what's left over is this pure intelligence that is going to do the right thing.
Yeah, that's very much like what you were saying about Buddhism, stripping down your false identities created by this unpleasantness around you. So I thought that was interesting. What you were saying about growing up in a Christian society, I also noticed that. What he was saying about church, at the time, you usually go to church, and to some extent, organized religion does rely on groupthink. So I thought that was interesting how he is basically, while still stating a belief in his religion, is refuting the organized aspects of it.
Yeah, in the early 1840s especially, that's a very early time period. That's not necessarily the time period that you would think, oh, this is people in Judeo-Christian societies are going to be talking about, well, God's there, but you don't really have to listen to him. That's not something that generally was being said, and so it was very controversial at the time. Yeah.
Well, as you read this, what jumped out at you? Is there a favorite passage or something that you really grabbed you or made you question what he was saying?
I really like the part about he doesn't want you to travel for the sake of entertainment, ooh, look at this cool foreign country. I thought that was interesting that he said that he feels traveling, if you're going to travel, it'd be sort of a soul-searching journey. I've read a lot of books The Last American Man by Elizabeth Gilbert, I believe, which is about, and books about men who go into nature to find themselves because they feel it's who they are and what they need to do. And he seemed to more believe in that than any sort of oh, I'm going to go to England and see the Tower of London because I want to. I thought that was very interesting because that wasn't something that I would necessarily have considered a part of this until he brought it in. And I thought that was kind of funny. He was don't do that. You don't need to do that. That's just entertainment. If you're going to go somewhere, it should be so you can better yourself and learn about yourself and not necessarily about other people.
And you can do that right here because, the old saying is, no matter where you go, there you are. So why go very far? So.
See, probably my favorite line is here towards the end where he said, "It is only as a man puts off all foreign support and stands alone that I see him to be strong and to prevail. He is weaker by every recruiter's banner. Is a man not better than a town?" I thought that was interesting because, your normal logic is that people are stronger when they stand together. So I liked how he's basically refuting that and saying that you are strongest when you stand alone, that you lose your identity when you're surrounded by, say, supporters.
My favorite part was the last line where he said, "Nothing can bring you peace but the triumph of principles." And I like that because in this society you see so much that winning and success is based off fortune and things that you can hold and quantify, but like the triumph of your principles is so much greater and it lasts so much longer than you do. So I thought that was a really cool idea.
Yeah.
One of his most famous lines is the consistency is the hobgoblin. I forgot just how it goes, but
A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds.
you're right. That's a great one.
Yeah.
What do you-
I really like that line.
Yeah.
I like,
How does that fit into the whole thing that we're talking about? That line.
well, it was a lot about how, when politicians are inconsistent, people tend to be like, oh, I don't trust them because they change their opinion.
They flip-flop.
Yeah,
Right.
but it was interesting because he said the exact opposite. He's saying you shouldn't have to keep your opinion the same throughout time because you can discover new things and decide that that's not really how I feel and change your mind. And I thought that was another thing that really I thought was very interesting about this, even though I knew it was the most famous part of it. I still thought it was really captivating.
Yeah, I liked what he was saying here, that it's important to be able to just kind of, roll with it. It's that routine is definitely the enemy of being creative. So I thought that was interesting how rather than saying you have to have kind of this foundation in your life, if he's saying rather you have to be completely spontaneous and you have to be able to change your ideas and your lifestyle, not because of what society says, but because you really think this is a good idea.
And it's just an extension. If he says, don't be bound by society or history or books or anything else, but that also refers to his past, is don't be
Yeah.
bound by what he's done before, which is, I think, very powerful. So, anything else that just grabbed you?
One of probably the most interesting thing I found about this is this one almost contradiction. I mean, most people today well, let me backtrack. Emerson's main philosophy here is that you must do as you wish to do, not concern yourself with other people. Most people today would, to some extent, consider that rather nihilistic, but he creates an ideal system out of it. He hails this as the true idealism. So I found that interesting that he's turning this, at first glance, rather nihilistic idea into something that you can really live your life by, that becomes a creed in itself.
I also thought it was a little bit like him writing this and the fact that he wants other people to read it is almost kind of going against his own thing and using society to his advantage. Like the fact that most people conform to what they read and what they hear, He's putting out this thing saying, don't do what other people say, but listen to me, which is almost the opposite. And I also thought it was very interesting that, like, initially reading it, it seems that a person who acts this way would seem very selfish. Like, it just, the way he's like, don't feel like you need to care about anyone else, which is definitely good to pay attention to yourself before you pay attention to others, but also him feeling like, oh, you don't need to be nice to people if you don't want to be nice to people. Like reading it at first, but as you got more through it, it seemed more like a full idea, but it also seemed like it might not work if other people don't think the same way. You could really hurt someone's feelings, because I know a lot of people that I know personally in my life, I tend to concern more with myself and know I need to take care of myself before I take care of other people. But other people don't always think that way. And so when other people don't think that way, they can get upset with you if they feel like you should be caring about them before you care about yourself, because they care about you before they care about themselves. So it's very much, it needs to be a two-way road. And so it's just the application of it is an interesting thing to think about based on all the things he says in the passage. So
I read it a little differently, but I can't really find evidence for it, is saying if you cut away all the crud, the layers of the onion, and you get down to that pure intelligence, that you're going to be very compassionate to other people, and that you're going to understand them, and you're going to not be disruptive to them. So
that's true. He does have the idea that all men are good on the inside, kind of. He believes in an innate goodness,
right.
which is, that is true.
I think it's like a two-step process, though. First, you have to take the time to find yourself and ignore other people's needs, and then once you found yourself, you can be compassionate, and you have that ability now.
It's like you have to make sacrifices to really find yourself, but once you do arrive at that final goal, then you will be happy you did, that you're cutting away the superficial understanding to really achieve a much more human layer of understanding other people.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It-
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. It's too easy, I think, to read that he's just saying just be selfish, you know.
Yeah.
He's saying much more, I think. And
I guess it's probably, in my opinion, because the way that I was seeing it is like it would work well if someone fully realized themselves and then acted this way, but if someone is trying to realize themselves and act this way at the same time, they may not come across as the nicest person.
I think the one main flaw in his logic here is that it requires you to find yourself in the context of society. And then society will think you're a jerk. They'll think you are being selfish. But I mean, I like his idea here of finding yourself through self-interest, but I do think it's to some extent flawed.
Okay. What do you think?
I think, I don't know, just kind of what everyone's been saying, you have to find yourself and then you need to be good. But I disagree that I think you can find yourself while still being good, as long as you can take the time to be by yourself and understand yourself, and then you can spend other time being with people. But I can't support that with the text.
I like your two-step processes. You have to look at yourself and do all that, and if you really peel layers off the onion, that you are going to be compassionate, even though that somebody else is the furthest away from that, you aren't going to react negatively against them. That's the way I read it. But you can find. Okay. One thing he does say, he said, isolation must not be mechanical but spiritual, and I think that's part of it. That mental sense of isolation is not devoid of a spiritual sense of the well-being of others.
Yeah.
So did you like it?
Yeah.
It was a little thick.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
it's
very thick.
lots of big words and
Yeah.
like long sentences with difficult metaphors, and like he'd start a sentence and then go off on a tangent and then end the sentence.
Yeah.
Definitely a more difficult read.
Yes, it was. Because I found it that way too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
You had to really sit down and think about every sentence before you could really understand it well.
Very famous essay, and it affected a lot of people. You know, from Thoreau to I've forgotten who else, but in the history of ideas. I mean, this essay is very important, and I think it was the first one to really bring out this idea of self-reliance in this way. So it might be something that would resonate for all of us later. You know, just saying, oh yeah.
You bring it up in conversations with people and
Well,
seem really smart.
Well, that's
Yeah,
part of it. That's part of it. Yeah.
I read these books because I want to feel smart.
Someone told me one time is the real worth of a great books discussion is on the way home. You're thinking, yeah. Then the next day you're going, yeah. So.
Quick, I gotta Skype everyone. This really good idea
I
I had.
understand this part now.
Wake up in the middle of the night. I had a really good idea.
Especially with a text this dense, because you don't catch everything, and then you
That's
sit
right,
down and
yeah.
talk about it, and you're like, I
Yeah.
didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah, this is really something you got to read like over and over if you really want to like fully understand all of his ideas, because there's just so much in each paragraph. You know, like he has a new idea every
Yeah,
paragraph.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, for 16 pages.
Yeah. One thing I liked was his definition of society and how it stopped us from the good, and that people are fighting for money and for position and all that, including ourselves, and that can get in the way of, you know, we have to put bread on the table. You guys don't yet, but you will. So that gets in the way of being true to yourself.
Yeah.
I think it was E.E. Cummings says the hardest job we have is to be yourself. And I certainly agree with that.
Yeah. It's definitely like this entire essay is very much a very easier said than done.
Yeah, right.
Kind of thing. Like he's like, oh, you just gotta like sit there and like figure out who you are and really think about it for a long time. It's like, you know, a lot of people don't have that time. You know, it's kind of for the 1840s. It's like a rich person essay.
Yeah.
It's like
You could spend the next 50 years doing it.
Yeah.
And you've got 50
Yeah.
years, so easily.
it seems like a challenge kind of to later read. educators, like he's saying, setting out this high set of ideals and then almost in a way challenging people to live up to it, because obviously according to him most people don't. So I think he's kind of like saying, this is how you should live your life. Now he's challenging people to do exactly that.
And I think the one big worth of it is just the question is saying, what does my true self want me to do at this moment? And just asking that even though no answer pops up is, and what are those false influences on me of society and everything I've learned in the past. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Join us next time to discuss another great selection. As Aristotle said, the best way to learn is to get together in small groups and discuss great ideas.